The subject assigned to me today is on an economy that is colored, or the economy and its colored miscarriage. It's an interesting subject which addresses both the economy as it ought to be, for its meaning, for its efficacy, for its relevance, and its division into black and white, and therefore its manifestation as a miscarriage by deliberate intent. So the points we are going to be touching upon primarily are going to be those that address the relevance of the economy, the purpose why it is categorized into, i.e. the black and the white economy, so to say, and finally we will address all this keeping Pakistan in firm view as a case in study and in reference. So let's start with understanding economy for what it means. Economy in any particular area of the world, be it political or a social pocket, represents production as a consequence of mental labor, physical labor, research, and the inference of the academia. Therefore, when we have to look at this particular labor, what we will essentially be confronted with is labor compensation and the end beneficiary of this particular activity. Now, this is the generic definition of an economy for what it is meant to mean and what it is meant to deliver. So in an economy, the essential thing to understand is the indulgence itself. Who is it really for? Is it for the producers of the production, or is it for the managers of the production? Legally speaking, they are two different particular segments, and they have a very vividly different rights and obligations from the legal perspective. The current world has been witnessing in contemporary history a conflict between the managers and the producers being the beneficiary of the labor, the managers being the servants to manage the judicious aspect of the economy, i.e., being managers appointed for the job based on merit and merit alone. Factors of production that impact an economy are therefore two. One that addresses the compensation for the managers of the economy, and the other is the factor of compensation for the people who labor to make the economy happen. So these two things in layman terms are referred to as taxation and labor compensation. Both taxation and labor compensation have their own characteristics and a base philosophy on the basis of which the supreme purpose of the laborers being the beneficiary is in focus. For taxation, it is simple to understand, and I would like to quote Ibn Khaldun here, who writes 650 years ago in his book called the Muqaddimah, that overtaxation kills the incentive to labor. And by modern theories of economics, the heads of accounts for taxation reduces production. Similarly, labor compensation is directly connected to the medium of exchange and its evaluation. In the current world scenario, if the medium of exchange is variable, then the skills are compromised and politically sabotaged. To give an example of a laborer having the skill of digging a hole in the ground based somewhere in a hard currency area, would perhaps be getting a couple of dollars an hour for his skill, and the same skilled labor in a third world environment, so as it is called, would be getting 2 rupees. So the buying power of the labor with identical skills varies, and therefore the factor of poverty, the factor of deprivation, and the factor of the dignity of labor and its moralities are all compromised. We'll go further on this. Taxation, again, when is addressed with heads of accounts which are many, while it reduces production and it kills the incentive to labor, it decisively consigns a society anywhere in the world to remain enslaved and in a condition which is inhuman. Now this is a ploy which is basically a battle between the colonists, as were, and those who are subject to, in any social order or the philosophy thereof, subscribing to the freedom of trade, encouraging based on competition, based on those factors that enable free market economies, freedom of interaction, freedom of trade, freedom of research, freedom of growth. So in any third world scenario where economies have been subject to the model prescribed by the colonist, have in effect subscribed to a destiny of slavery. Therefore, it is prudent, it is practical, and it is important, incumbent, necessary that the model of the colonist for addressing an economy be shelved and be evicted from any social environment, be it politically called a nation state or otherwise. Expanding on this thought, we need to have a benchmark for comparison. We'll take Islam as an example, where the concept of free trade based upon the concept of the Ummah has been propagated. The minute that concept is arrested, what emerges as a consequence is the birth of monolithic rule by an elitish cult, which is what the purpose in the first place has been in devising nation states on the planet. Cleverly done by the colonist, but so it is. There are trade barriers, there are tariff barriers, there is movement of goods and money, restrictions, all of which only strengthen the hold of the colonist on natural resources and human resources in defined political territories manifest as nation states around the planet. This is not a hidden agenda. This is like an open book, and it's no rocket science to understand, and therefore pursuing the agenda of the colonist is imprudent and illegal. The colonists want a rule of control, whilst Islam has propagated the rule of law. Based on fair competition, based on merit. The global view, if you have a global overview, what we see today is a population of 7.6 billion people inhabiting this earth, and they are divided into 183 to 290 odd nation states, and therefore, from the perspective of colonists, it is easier to control 190 odd leaders, thrust on populations and thrust on natural resources in pockets which are referred to as nation states, than being equitably and judiciously being able to control all 7.6 billion people. And this is primarily what the scenario is when it comes to addressing economies. The case we are trying to address here is the difference between black economies and white economies. The term black economy, to begin with, is an oppressive term because it relates to the color of the skin more so, establishing white supremacy, and without any consideration for the extent of labor that is their input to global production. Let's take an example of Pakistan, where the formal economy is small and the so-called black economy is 12 times the size. So what is this black economy all about? The black economy, so referred to, represents that circulation of activity, production and money which does not come within the tax net. So they are referred to as black economy. This is discriminative. There is no such thing in an economy. When we refer to an economy, there is no such thing as a black economy. Taxation to run government, i.e. to hire managers that constitute a government, represents a figure of expense that an economy must be able to afford. That particular contribution must come strictly from one factor of production. That factor of production is land. Of the four factors of production, land, labor, capital, enterprise, only one factor of production, land, which is primarily there because the labor force exists on it, needs to be taxed to settle the bill for meeting the expenses of the government. Nothing more. Production, labor input, trading, industrialization, agriculture, mining, tourism must all be made free from any form of taxation so that the emergence of monolithic governments controlling natural resources and human resources that labor are completely denied. We cannot allow taxation based on factors of consumption. We have seen in the last 7 decades, for instance, finance ministers and prime ministers and rulers that have emerged making a statement wanting to expand the tax net. It is ridiculous and comical. In this particular economy we call that exists in Pakistan, an unborn child is also subject to taxation here because taxation here is divided into two, direct and indirect taxes. The food we eat, the water we drink, the clothes we wear, the roads we use, the education we get, the health care that we are deprived of are all subject to tax, indirect taxation. And for them, the rulers so planted, seeking to expand the tax net, is comical because indirect taxes are even taxing today the fetus in a mother's womb. They are doing this primarily to serve the agenda of the colonists who enable them to remain in office. All factors of political science here stand challenged because of this hidden agenda. So in the Pakistan scenario, if the economy has to flourish, the independence of all factors of production have to come in consonance with our ideology, i.e. the Islamic ideology, and they will manifest as follows: that land will be the only factor that will take care of the remuneration and the tab that needs to be picked up by people that constitute government as servants of the people. All other factors of production must strictly remain for the beneficiary, i.e. the population. Then you come to the factor of labor, their health, their quality, their skills have to be world class. That cost must come from land and is added to the cost which you paid to the managers of an economy, the servants of the people. The third factor of capital essentially cannot be linked to any basket of currencies around the globe. The entire concept is oppressive because capital is a medium of exchange representing production and the asset base of a nation state, if we should so speak, from the point of view of what does exist today as a divided world. In the Pakistan case, the revaluation of the rupee is absolutely incumbent based on our asset base and totally devoid of any dictates which are alien, irrespective of any political, security, military reasons. This population of 221 million people should be able to hire managers of their security needs from the levels of their production and their asset base such that they dispel any form of alien oppression, and they are capable of just doing that and nothing else. They should be able to hire a judiciary, a civil bureaucracy that serves their purpose of judiciously protecting and managing the society within and the international oppressive agendas coming out of the bank of colonists. And the civil bureaucracy likewise has to follow suit as regulators. It is with this end and purpose of destroying an elitish cult that serves the larger interest of colonists that the reformation of the Pakistan economy, based on 100% urbanization, based on a corporate Pakistan covered in my previous talks, is absolutely crucial and necessary. The current view coming from the rulers that do exist, still serving the cause of alien powers and colonists, is, and this is for Pakistan, that Pakistan becomes or is becoming a conduit for global trade in the region. And that should bring enough money for this economy. If we have to assume that to be a statement of any worth and value, then what needs to be understood is that if money should be coming in, that will only strengthen the monolithic rule that does exist today, which benefits a handful of people who are presumed rulers with any facade of an elected stamp on them or a stamp on them of need as managers of your security or the security of the nation state. These are facades. The people do not benefit from it. Everywhere in the world, in the developed world, where change has taken place, it is that this particular realization amongst the people that has managed to dispel, overthrow, evict this bunch we call the elite cult for governance, that represent monolithic rule that only benefits them, disregarding the need of any population. In Pakistan, there is no such thing as the black economy, and the entire activity must be back integrated, and indirect taxes must be shelved, and therefore what has been proposed in my book, in my writings to the governments in succession is 100% urbanization and a corporate Pakistan. This will indeed evict the ruling elite from their profit centers and bring the benefits of real wealth that exists within the territory comprising Pakistan to the people of Pakistan. This particular model is equally implementable in all third world and has merit and has to be well done at home, so that the concept proliferates, and with the proliferation of this concept you have your strength politically and militarily around the world. Religion is secondary, but the people's power is fundamental and is foremost. So when you want to shift the wealth of nations to the people, the profit centers are automatically lost. The ruling elite that serve the purposes of colonists evaporate and are replaced with merit. The restoration of the concept of the Ummah, therefore, is the destination which should be in the firm view of all third world countries. For Muslims particularly, and for countries that are suffering for absolutely no reason whatsoever, like the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. So, in being able to explain from the caption given today, economy and its colored miscarriage, the conclusive note is the complete remodeling of our economy for what it represents based on our philosophy and our ideology, addressing all factors of production, i.e. land, labor, capital, and enterprise. Thank you.